Poverty ultimately began when First Nations were forced to relocate onto reserves that did not have infrastructure or living conditions suitable to start new life. The deep roots that led to First Nations poverty include many different things. The loss of land in the reserves is a major factor ultimately leading to poverty amongst our First Nations people. This is just one of the base issues. The First Nations people were pushed onto small pieces of land which are known as reserves. First Nations people are so discluded that the main necessities in life, including food, inhumane living adaptations, no economic setup, and money, are hard for them to receive. First Nations are the first people to step on Canadian soil. Here are some following facts. In Regina, 24% of the population is poor, and several factors can explain this. 52% of all Aboriginal children in 2003 were poor. Ultimately, we care about the legacy and uprising for poverty amongst the First Nations because the poverty and uprising continues to rise today. How is this an act of injustice? The loss of land, leading to other major issues, ultimately results in poverty. Injustice is a lack of fairness or justice, or an unjust action or decision. Our Canadian government took our home on native land away from our natives and pushed them off to reserves that are not fit for life, therefore leaving our First Nations without healthy, sustainable living conditions. Critical questions. Why did our Canadian government find the need to exclude First Nations instead of letting them benefit our society? Why didn't First Nations people stand up? What will happen if they fight against or try to move back? Is our government doing anything to give back? Why is the loss of land happening? How many First Nations reserves are in Canada? Is it a good idea for the Canadian government to build more? Factors that contribute to loss of land resulting in poverty. One of the main factors leading to poverty is the loss of land and reserves amongst our First Nations people. When our government takes the land away, not only does this alone result in poverty, but there are many other factors that come along with it. 1 in 4 First Nations children live in poverty. As a result of the First Nations being relocated onto reserves, they did not have healthy living conditions, infrastructure, or education. The loss of land resulted in high poverty rates, lack of shelter, healthcare and food, and death. Voices that need to be heard. The First Nations voices need to be heard. Our community needs to be heard. The government needs to be heard. Catholic sources. The Bible. The earth is the Lord's and that all that contains, the world and all those who dwell in it. The Bible passage explaining that our land in the end does not belong to us, it belongs to God. It shows that no one is more important than anyone else, and we need to treat everyone with dignity, kindness, and respect. Overall, no one deserves more or less than anyone else. The U.S. Catholic bishops. Poverty calls us to show hope. Poverty is the flesh of the poor Jesus, and that child who is hungry, and the one who is sick, and those unjust social creatures. This quote, stated by Pope Francis, explains how poverty is what we should tie each and every one of us together. First Nations land is the unjust social structure, and by it being taken away, it is leading to those becoming hungry, sick, and ultimately resulting in poverty. This is not our Catholic way of life, and this is not acceptable. My third source is the encyclical. The climate is a common good, belonging to all and meant for all. The greatest impact of this change falls on the poorest, but many of those who possess more resources and economic of political power seem to be more concerned with masking the problems or concealing the symptoms. This quote from the encyclical connects to poverty and the loss of land among the First Nations people, and explains how those who have everything always want more. What is currently being done? Many First Nations people and communities are trying to do whatever they can to make poverty a thing of the past. The Seabird Island community from British Columbia is trying to provide an information transfer opportunity to help First Nations and their communities throughout Canada by helping with housing issues, environmental information, and a healthy and sustainable way of life. Our local community is trying to work together to put together organizations to help each other out. Our Aboriginal community. As the First Nations community has overcome so many obstacles, the Truth and Reconciliation Act is the wants and needs of our First Nations. Number 20 states, in order to address the jurisprudential disputes concerning Aboriginal people who do not reside on reserves We call upon the federal government to recognize, respect, and address the distinct health issues of the Métis, Inuit, and off-reserve Aboriginal people. We stand together. We Stand Together is an awareness-raising campaign trying to get more people talking about the issues. The Canadian government, the First Nation Infrastructure Fund, has provided $279 million towards creating a better environment and quality of life for the communities. Their goal is to fund for 6 categories: planning and skills development, solid waste management, roads and bridges, energy systems, connectivity, and disaster. Possible solutions. Ultimately, as Catholics and stewards of God's creation, we need to come together and help our First Nations out. We can start working together as a grade 12 class to come up with ideas to fix this issue. In my opinion, building more reserves that are sustainable for life are a good start to helping our First Nations. The loss of land and not equipped living conditions are one of the main issues, so by providing reserves, this could help. As we are the ones that took away the right living conditions for our First Nations, it is our responsibility to give it back. In my opinion, I think part of the taxpayers' money should go towards the First Nations by donating food, helping with more education, and building sustainable reserves with proper living conditions. I have found an organization that I have signed up for on the We Day. It's a good idea to help, and it is easy to inform our classmates and others about this issue. In my opinion, the organization and the solutions have been set in place to reach the goal, and it is coming off to a good start. But in the end, anything is better than staying silent, so stand up and help today.